Well, we have time for a few questions. Do we have anybody? All right. So, start here.
If there's no business, how do people get goods and services?
Well, right. I mean, like, they may not, right? I mean, like, there are certainly collapse scenarios in which everything collapses, right? And that's also, we've seen examples of that from history as well. I mean, I don't think it's like alarmist, or I'm not like, encouraging anyone to go build a bunker in Wyoming or anything, but, societal collapse is certainly not something that is outside the realm of human experience. We've seen total catastrophic social collapse before, and the fact that we've got cars and computers and the internet now doesn't seem to suggest to me that we're any more immune from it now than we ever were, right? So, yeah, I mean, like, and like, there's also lots of scenarios under which people get less and less and less goods and services, right? And we figure out how to tell ourselves that we're all okay with that, and it just gets worse and worse, and we feel less and less happy with our culture. And it's like, again, it's already sort of happening. I mean, we hear all the time this discussion about the disparity between the haves and the have-nots and how it's growing, in a significant way. And there's a great deal of animus and anxiety and cultural malaise, I think, that is born of just that. Whether you can make a macroeconomic case or not for why it is or isn't okay that the 0.1% is growing exponentially wealthier than everyone else, is irrelevant to the question of whether the 99% hate it, right? If they hate it, they hate it, You're
kind of hitting on my question a bit, having served for 20 years as a public company CEO. I'm familiar with the challenges that the CEO has with shareholders, employees, and customers, juggling those. And it seems like today with public companies, there's so much pressure to deliver every cent to the shareholder. And to that 1%, as Eliot's alluding to, they seem more greedy for every cent also. I mean, it seems like they're less caring about social causes, employee causes. I mean, they want as much delivered to the bottom line as possible. So how does this discussion occur? And I think it's a great one in terms of being more human. How does it occur with the 1%?
One of the, I'm an ex-Dell guy, right? So I saw what happened recently in our company going private, which I thought should have happened a long time ago. When you look at, I love to debate Wall Street, and why is it good to force you to be the best you can be every quarter? Is that the best for you, or is it best for your customers? And so many times I've seen people where they had to, and I've been part of companies where we asked people to buy things in before they're ready, because we need the numbers, right? And I started to look at turnarounds, and I remember telling people, if you're actually selling this so that you can get a bonus to buy something new, you're fired. This has got to be in the best interest of your customer. And that's not what we deal with today. And when you look at business based on relationships, what really honors a relationship, what doesn't, you're going to find the companies that actually are really good about relationships and really care are probably ones that are going to say, I wish I wasn't public, because that actually stops me from being the best I can be. And I can tell you, I say something a lot that I always get not criticized for, but people don't understand. When I say that innovation, when it goes too far, becomes fraud. And we're all selling something that doesn't exist because we want somebody to buy it, and we're asking investors to invest in it, and it may never be real. That's all a big part of what we're dealing with today. And I wish people could get real and say what's in the best interest of us, each of us, because you've obviously done very well, and the market, you must have been part of something very significant. It's a good business that obviously was needed, and I thank you for that. I wish that was not the case. There's a lot of businesses that I wish that just would go out of business. So.
Well, and I think that it is the case that the majority of humanity doesn't have a problem with this question. They don't wonder whether or not business can or could or should do more to make the world a better place. They act in opposition to that sense because it seems like wisdom to do what the system politically expects of them, right? We work with people who are in sort of quasi-governmental organizations that we care about a great deal. And we've seen all kinds of situations where the political milieu within their organization forces otherwise extraordinarily good people to call it wise to do things that they would never do in their personal lives, in their social interactions. I mean, I say in this quasi-governmental organization, but I've seen that in every organization, right? That as the politics, as the rules that govern the way the organization operates become more robust and grow over time, there is a greater sense on the part of the people who work within that organization that it is just wisdom to act in ways that are in contravention to their personal ethics and morals. So I don't know that it's just a given that people don't think we should be doing this, right? In fact, I suspect that the people who really think that we shouldn't be doing this are rather small in number.
Could I ask you a question? In your company, if I asked you to say, if your company was a person, who would that person be?
Probably be. We were a bank, and we'd probably be the guy from Mr. Smith Goes to, is it what, the Willie Loman? No, not Willie Loman. That's not it. That's the friendly banker from that 1950s film, Mr. Potter. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
But you're saying that the age of the average person, who was that? If you looked at everybody and you had one person would kind of describe who that business was, you're saying that's that person?
I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I would say so.
Okay. When you ask communities or countries, I asked this about Bangladesh. If your country was a person, who would it be? And it took them a year, and they came back and said a 24-year-old male named Muhammad, who's a Muslim, who's highly educated and did not want to leave home. So now we understand the country a little bit better. When we asked this of Morocco, they said it's a woman who's 33 years old that wants to stay home and have babies. So that's the majority. Then you understand why they have to bring people from the outside to work. It makes sense in regards to if you can't go create a business in Morocco thinking you're going to get workers because they're not there. But if you want to go set up a store to sell, they're there. It's very interesting to understand the world. Very interesting. It's a very interesting looking at it. So.
We have time for one more question.
Yes.
Eliot, your last comment kind of touched on my question, I think, but I'm curious on your reflections on what the scale of business has to do with the ability to be human in the best sense. And at what point do the managerial systems and controls and policies become difficult in the sense of the ability to be human? And so
Right.
just to comment on scale.
What I think is so interesting about human beings is that we are constructed using the same stuff that everything else in the natural world is constructed from, and using the same models and systems, right? So if you look at the way that a forest grows or the way that a slime mold grows or something like that, it's really not profoundly different than the way that the human phenotype comes to fruition or whatever, right? Now, out of that emerges an intelligence, a self-reflection that allows us to look at the world around us and make meta-analyses of it, right? But nowhere along the way in there was a top-down hierarchy, controlled, system. And yet it's clearly a scalable system, right? Clearly it works to scale. And so I think your question is just as poignant as it could be, and it's the one that I immediately puzzled over from the beginning, right? Because I think the great benefit to humanity of the Industrial Revolution was scale, right? That suddenly people who otherwise didn't have access had access. And whether that's just to some want or whether it be to a need, it did it for all those things, but it came at a great cost, obviously. We know what that cost is, and it's reached a point of some profound diminishing returns. But, so I think, yes, the challenge of making business more human is in part a question of scale, and I think we have to look to the natural world. I'm very heavily influenced by the work of the social capital theory people and the cognitive science people like Douglas Hofstadter, who have developed models that are scalable, but that are based on biology. So it can scale up very big, and it can act in an intelligent way, just like we do. I mean, if we are able to act intelligently, and we don't operate according to any of the principles that we use to build, say, a business or a computer, then why do we assume that the only way to build an organization is the way that we build a computer, right? I mean, obviously, we represent a model that is far superior and doesn't act like a computer. It's not top-down, it's not hierarchical, it doesn't, it's not rigid, it's not, controlling, it's not a panopticon, it's not all the things that all of the thinkers for the last 100 years have been complaining about, right? So let's look at ourselves. That's maybe the most poignant statement about this whole thing, this whole be human thing, is that when we say business be human, what we really mean is look at the way that humans are constructed and recapitulate that, Make yourself in our own image. So that's the idea. I believe it's scalable. I believe that just like we are, we can build scalable organic systems.
I don't disagree. I think what he's talking, it doesn't matter the size of the business. I was very lucky in my life. Dave Thomas made a big difference in my life. And you look at what Dave created as an amazing human being. When I look at brands, I look at the people that started them. Dave Fuente, who started Office Depot, great man, right? So I saw in big business, these guys created everything that they wanted people to treat them like. And I remember a friend of mine told me years ago, you can tell when a business is big, and even a big business can stay small. He said if it's big, people will start talking about their own divisions, their own little things. And even a big company can be small if people talk about the company. That's it. And I remember during the days of Dell, we all talked about Dell. Now it's talking about this division. This, you can see why it's hurting. So.
Good.